Libero Milone, thank you very much for being with us today. Could you explain to us the essence of this claim that you've made to the Vatican, how it came about and why you're bringing it now?
Well, it's a very long story. I'll try to say it in a few words. The matter refers to the summer of 2017 when I was asked to resign together with one of my deputy auditors, Ferruccio Panico. We resigned under threat of being arrested because they had delivered to us a decree, what you would call a criminal decree, saying that we had been spying and we were accused of embezzlement. Now, neither of the two things ever happened because it's not within the scope of the work an auditor would do. It all started with my visiting Monsignor Becciu on the morning of the 19th of June, and he told me that the Pope had no longer had any faith in what we were doing and had asked for my resignation. And I said, well, you know, I don't understand. Well, you were spying and you had embezzled. I said, well, can I speak to the Pope? Because according to the statute, which is the document defining the role of the Auditor General, which in the Vatican is law, because it's passed by the Pope, I reported to him. So I thought it would be appropriate that I should hear these words from him. And he said it was not possible, that I should speak to the head of the police force, the gendarmerie, who would explain the issues to me. But at the same time, he said, you know, you were spying on me. And I said, I was spying on you? He said, yes, you knew that I hadn't paid all my social security contributions for a very small, insignificant amount, 600 euros. I was very surprised that he made this statement because he was making a statement about something he could not know about. And I'll tell you why. In the statute, there's a provision for whistleblowing, and it foresees that anybody who has anything to say can go to the Auditor General, and they will be treated in a reserved manner, and if necessary and useful for the Auditor General, he use it. Otherwise, he will just file the information. Now, I had received in this January of 2017 from a person external to the Vatican a piece of paper which said exactly what Monsignor Becciu mentioned to me in the morning of June 17th. Right. But you know, the reason why I said, well, how could he know something he should know? Because it was delivered to me by an external person. Nothing to do with the Vatican. And the other amazing thing is that when they raided my office in the afternoon of that day, they broke up the offices, the cabinets in my office, and they brought in the fire brigade to do that. They created really damaged the furniture. They immediately went to the folder where all these documents for the whistleblowing were kept.
Right.
How did they know it was there?
And
it was in my office, obviously, because I had to keep it according to the regulations. Yeah. But they knew exactly where to find it.
So they basically claimed that these things that you were given to you from an external consultant, if I'm correct, they claimed that these were evidence of spying, whereas they were really things which weren't relevant to your work, but you were given anyway according to the statutes that you were.
It was irrelevant to my work, and yes, I filed it because the regulation said that anything I received I should file. It would have been much more damaging for me as Auditor General to destroy the documentation.
Right.
So that's why I believe, if I can use the word, I was framed, because they knew something that they couldn't know.
Yes.
And shouldn't know.
And what do you think the motives were for them doing this?
Well, because we were doing our work properly. You know, we had a statute which there is a statute which requires the audits to be done according to international standards. And international standards are very challenging. And my 40-year experience in that world, I knew how to proceed. It has been my job for all those years. And we follow those procedures, and the amazing thing in all of this is that I had no choice. You know, I had no choice because it was in the statute, but I had no choice because the regulations for auditing public administrations, public authorities, are determined by an organization called InterSci, which is a sort of audit standard setting authority for public authorities, which issues standards called ESI. And we follow those. And the amazing thing is that the Vatican had undersigned the agreement with Intersci in 1986
Right.
and was paying its dues every year. So, what was I doing wrong? I was doing exactly what they had decided to do 30 years before,
Right.
So I was carrying out my audit work, and of course it was challenging, And you see, the big problem they had was that they were coming out of a very, let's say, raw accounting situation. A lot of the entities, there were 136 at that time, had very simplistic accounting. A lot had been on a cash basis,
Yes.
and we were now moving to accrual-based accounting, which is the standard way of doing accounting, using IPSAS accounting standards, which are the accounting standards for public authorities, which were the rules determined by the Secretariat of the Economy, which was the dicastery headed by Cardinal Pell.
Right.
And it was a big change management issue, about changing the way you do things.
Yes.
But we tried to encourage the people because we had to accomplish a task. So we had meetings and we explained how things were done. We even had training sessions to explain how things are done. But evidently, these very much more sophisticated procedures were uncovering things that somebody didn't want us to uncover.
Yes. So would you say it's a sort of mixture of malfeasance and perhaps a bit of a shock about how...
For some, there was a shock that we were going into such detail.
Yes.
But the detail was nothing of a surprise because they were the auditing standards.
Yes. Right. Right.
Now, we came across many things in our work, and I reported every single thing to the Pope because that was my duty, and to Cardinal Parolin, who is the Secretary of State, on the basis of instructions received from the Pope. So they knew exactly what I was doing. So any challenge that I received was something that I already had spoken to the Pope or Cardinal Parolin.
Yes. And during that raid, they understand, if I'm correct, they took your cell phone and your iPad and they didn't return.
See, in the morning I was addressed by Becciu in that manner. Then he sent me to the gendarmerie, and they told me that the detail of what their accusations were, which were non-existent according to me, because I hadn't done any of the things that they mentioned. In the afternoon they took me back to my office, and the object was to take all the documents that I had prepared.
Yes.
They put all the reports and documents from my office in boxes, which they took away, and during the raid they took the documents concerning the whistleblowing I mentioned before, but at the same time, at the end of the meeting, they took away my cell phone, and my personal cell phone and my personal iPad, in addition to the office computer and cell phones. But they had no reason to take away my personal instruments, simply because there were personal private matters on them, but also because I had other professional information on it concerning to listed companies. I was on the board,
Yes.
I had been on the board of listed companies, so that's very confidential information.
Yes. And am I right in understanding that you were bugged and there was also...
Well, no, I insisted on getting my equipment back.
Yes.
It took about 10 days with the involvement of Cardinal Parolin, and the amazing thing was that the documents accusing me had been signed by the promoter of justice, who is the prosecutor in the Vatican, and the people who had carried out the interrogation were the police force, the gendarmerie, and it was the gendarmerie who took away my equipment.
Right.
After 10 days I was told to go to the office of the gendarmerie to collect my equipment, and I was surprised to find a letter I had to sign to sign off for having received my equipment, but the letter was signed by Cardinal Becciu. Right. Now Cardinal, he was then a Monsignor.
Yes.
What had he to do with it?
Right. Right.
It was the decree was from the prosecutor. They were investigating what I was doing, not Monsignor Becciu.
So all of it paints a picture of being very much set up by senior officials to get you out.
Well, if you may remember that I made an interview in September 2017, a few months after I left, And immediately afterwards, both Cardinal Becciu and Commander Gianni made statements to the effect is that hadn't he resigned, we would have arrested him.
Yes.
We had a lot of proof against him. We did 7 months of investigation. We've never seen those claims. We've asked for them. It was my right to ask for that information. It's never been produced to us. And but when Monsignor Becciu said, hadn't he resigned, we would have arrested him, well, he was only the head of the administration department, the deputy of the Secretary of State, you know.
Yeah.
That would have been a phrase I would have expected the prosecutor to announce. Right? So maybe they bartered my resignation for an arrest.
Yes. Yes.
It has made me think for all these years. Now, why have we made the request now? Well, we tried with Cardinal Parolin to meet over these 5 years. We met maybe 15, 16 times to find an amicable solution, you know, to the matter. My lawyers even wrote twice to find a solution, but we never were able to find this. Since Ferruccio Panico, who was my deputy, was also thrown out, is ill.
Yes.
And this is a very important matter which has disturbed me enormously, is that he wasn't ill at the time we were working there, but he had a sort of not a good value of his prostate value. And therefore, because the Vatican medical office was virtually across the road from us, he was being monitored on a regular basis to see these values, which is what one would do normally. When he was thrown out, he went back to his office to collect his papers of monitoring. It disappeared.
Yes.
He sent a registered letter to get the information. They never sent it to him. I involved Cardinal Parolin, and it was never given to us. And in the meantime, time went by, and his hometown is Torino. He went to the hospital in Torino, and by that time the value of his PSA value had exploded, and his illness became very serious. And he is now in a very difficult situation, being cured, but I think everybody who knows about these illnesses knows that there is a time range which doesn't last very long.
So because of the delay in
well, the delay was interrupted.
Back.
The doctors told him, had you not interrupted your monitoring, we could have intervened earlier and could have done something much more precise.
And now his life is in the balance, really.
Very much in the balance, very dodgy situation.
Right, right. So what have been the personal consequences for you as well as Mr. Panico?
Since I was thrown out, I have not been able to work anymore. Because before joining the Vatican, firstly I was with Deloitte for many years. I was the head of Deloitte in Italy. Then I became a board member for important listed companies. The search firms say, it's very difficult for us to place you because they just have to Google and they say Milone is a spy. It's very embarrassing for them, and therefore they choose somebody else. So I've not worked.
Even though the charges were withdrawn in 2018, but there's still that cloud.
They were withdrawn, but we've never been able. There's never been an official statement from the Vatican to say they're withdrawn, and there was nothing there. And this was something that I requested. And in our amicable discussions with Cardinal Parolin, we wanted a monetary settlement, but also a statement to say, these guys have done nothing. To put it simply.
And clear your name.
To clear the name. It's a reputational issue.
Exactly. Yes. Right. I see. And so, how do you hope this issue will be resolved? That your name will be cleared, and that you can draw a line under this.
Well, we presented the claim because time is going too fast. Ferruccio's illness is accelerating too. So a solution has to be found. And anyway, after 5 years, I enjoy gardening, but too much of it is too much. I'd like to do some professional work. And so we presented the claim. I believe that the courts will will analyze the documentation. We furnished the documentation to show what we did was within the constraints or the perimeter of the law. That they will be fair in assessing it and be able to award us what we require, and somebody makes a statement that our reputation is is re-recognized again.
And your case will now have to be heard in a Vatican tribunal.
Well, it's deposited in the Vatican tribunal
So
because
yeah.
the work was there,
Yeah.
and we deposited on the 4th of November.
Right. Right. And how much did the Pope know about all of this? Do you think? You wrote to him, didn't you, asking for a meeting afterwards? But
I wrote 7 times to the Pope.
yeah.
I've never received a reply. Why? I don't know.
Mm.
I even have a doubt that maybe he never was able to read the letters. I don't know. I have no clue whatsoever. It surprises me because when I met him and I worked with him physically until April the 1st, that's another matter. Until April the 1st I was meeting him every 4 or 5 weeks because he wanted to have these reports discussed with him about the issues we were finding. And all of a sudden, when I asked to meet him again towards the end of May, I was told the procedure has changed. I had to ask the head of papal audiences for an appointment.
Yes.
I said, but I don't know. I don't need an official appointment.
Right.
I'm discussing work with the Pope. You know, I've done this for 9 months. They said no, the procedure has changed, and they stopped me from seeing him.
Right.
I've never seen him ever since. I had to work through his secretary. I was preparing the work and the reports and hand them to the secretary, and the secretary would come back to me with the Pope's comments. A bit ridiculous, really.
Yes. Right. And do you expect perhaps to hear from him now? You've made this claim.
I don't know.
No.
I just want the thing to be sorted out, settled,
Yeah.
and be able to work and have the monetary reward. You know, basically the monetary reward we ask for is unfair dismissal,
Yes.
interrupted contract. You
Yeah.
know, I had a 5-year contract.
Yes.
Moral damages and reputational damages. And
Yes.
for Ferruccio, we've also asked for, well, I don't know what to call it, but damage for his illness, which has most likely shortened his lifespan.
Yes. Right. Right. Okay. I think that's all. Thank you very much for sharing.
My
that with us.
pleasure.